Rain slicked the pavement as Casey Monroe jumped off her scooter and jogged toward the revolving doors of Novatech Tower. She hugged a soggy paper bag close to her chest, careful not to ruin the sushi order inside. Her black cap shaded her eyes from the drizzle, and her jeans clung to her knees. It was just another delivery, 1 of 5. Already today. But something about this one made her nervous. The order had come in with explicit instructions. Deliver to the CEO's office on the 40th floor. No substitutions. No delays. She was already 3 minutes behind. She entered the lobby, nearly slipping on the marble floor. A security guard glanced at her ID badge and buzzed her through. With a smirk, the elevator dinged, cold and sterile, and Casey stepped in. Her reflection in the mirror panel wall showed fatigue and a hint of doubt. She wasn't just tired from the rain, she was tired of barely scraping by. By day she delivered food, by night she took online coding courses. Her dream of becoming a software engineer felt impossibly far. As the elevator climbed, she rehearsed how she'd apologize for being late. The doors slid open to a polished hallway, bathed in natural light. Modern art lined the walls, and every step echoed in the quiet. A sharp-looking receptionist raised a skeptical eyebrow as Casey approached. "Delivery for Mr. Hale," she said. "He's in his office," the receptionist replied. Motioning toward a frosted glass door already ajar, Casey tapped twice and peeked inside. The room was tense. A cluster of suited people surrounded a desk, their voices low and urgent. At the center sat Colin Hale, CEO of Novatech, frowning at a flickering laptop screen. No one noticed her enter. "I have your lunch," Casey said, her voice tentative. Hale looked up, surprised. "Oh yeah, thanks," he said distractedly. She stepped forward, placing the food bag on a side table. A man beside Hale muttered, "This is a total systems crash. If we don't get this resolved, the morning update wipes out everything." Another added, "Recovery isn't syncing. Backup is stuck in a reboot loop." Casey blinked. She wasn't supposed to say anything, but something caught her eye. "Excuse me," she said, gently. "Your error log just flashed a kernel panic. That's not a sync issue. It's a misdirected pointer." Silence blanketed the room. One of the men scoffed. "You're a delivery girl. Do you even know what a kernel panic is?" Casey blushed. "Yes, sir. I've been studying systems architecture online." Another engineer whispered, "She might be right." Hale's eyes narrowed, curious. "What would you do if it were your system?" Casey hesitated, heart pounding. "Remount the recovery volume, isolate the virtual instance, assign a dummy IP, and force reboot. Then clone only the live tables, not the cache. The loop ends there." No one moved. Finally, Hale gestured to an unused laptop and said, "Show us." She shook her head. "I don't need to touch anything, just guide someone through it. I'm not authorized." Hale nodded to his lead tech. "Do what she says." Skepticism filled the air, but the team followed her step-by-step instructions. One by one, the screens came back online. The room held its breath. The lead engineer's voice cracked when he said, "It's working." Applause erupted. Casey stood still, stunned. Hale leaned forward. "What's your name?" She cleared her throat. "Casey Monroe." He smiled. "Miss Monroe, you just saved us 7 figures." She gave a shaky nod, unsure what to do next. By the time she left the office, her hair had dried and her confidence had grown an inch. She pressed the elevator button, still trying to process what had just happened. The doors opened. She stepped in alone. As they descended, her phone buzzed. Her next delivery was across town, 40 minutes away in traffic, back to reality. She exited the building without a word. Outside, the city buzzed as usual. She mounted a scooter, reset the GPS, and disappeared into the river of yellow taxis and grey sidewalks, her mind spinning with possibilities she hadn't dared imagine. Later that night, Casey sat at her tiny kitchen table with a bowl of cereal and her battered laptop. She opened her code editor and stared at the half-written Python script on her screen. Everything felt the same but different. She wasn't a different person, but maybe, just maybe, someone had seen what she could do. She replayed the moment Hale asked for her name. She had spoken clearly, offered real help, and people listened. It felt surreal. She saved her work, shut the laptop, and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow is just another day, but maybe not." Unbeknownst to her, Colin Hale had spent the evening looking up her name. No LinkedIn, no formal resume, just a delivery app record and a few online code repositories under a simple handle. Code Monroe 7. He watched the code she'd posted, clean, efficient, and often creative. "Who is this girl?" he muttered. His assistant entered with a folder. "We found her employment file from the food service. She's local, no college degree, took some online courses, self-taught, but the repo she runs has commits cleaner than half our junior devs." Hale raised an eyebrow. "Set up a meeting." The next morning, Casey was back at work. She stacked delivery bags in a crate and prepared her scooter. Her manager, Paul, shouted from the back, "Monroe! Someone's here for you!" She looked up to see a man in a sleek suit holding a card. "Mr. Hale sent me. He'd like to speak with you." Casey froze. "About what?" She asked. "About your future," he said. Paul whistled low. "What'd you do?" "Save his cat from a server." She laughed nervously. You wiped her hands and followed the man outside. A black sedan waited at the curb, engine running. Inside the car, silence hung heavy. Casey stared out the window, unsure if she was excited or terrified. They pulled into the Novatech garage and took a private elevator to the executive level. This time, she wasn't soaked or late. Hale greeted her personally. "Good to see you again," he said, offering a handshake. She took it. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "That wasn't luck yesterday. That was skill. Real skill, and we want to offer you something." Her heart raced. "What kind of offer?" she asked, cautious. "A chance," he said simply. "An internship in our systems division, paid, with mentorship, learn with our team, build a future from something more than tips." Casey's eyes widened. "I don't have a degree," she whispered. "Don't need one," he replied. "You've got proof of work." She hesitated, emotion creeping in. "I've failed a lot," she admitted. "So has every great developer I know," he said. "The difference is you didn't quit. That's what matters here." She looked down, then back up. "When do I start?" He grinned. "Tomorrow. And Casey, leave the sushi bag at home." That night, Casey didn't study. She didn't need to. For the first time, she allowed herself to breathe. A future she thought was impossible had opened like an unexpected door, and this time, she'd walked right through it. The next morning, Casey arrived at Novatech's headquarters, dressed not in her delivery gear, but in borrowed slacks and a plain blouse she ironed 3 times. Her hands trembled slightly as she signed in at the front desk. She wore her nerves like a second skin, trying to suppress the thought that she didn't belong. But the receptionist greeted her with a kind smile and an access badge marked Intern Systems. That small rectangle felt heavier than any food bag she'd ever carried. As she stepped into the elevator, her reflection looked back with equal parts fear and pride. On the 39th floor, a junior engineer named Eli greeted her. "You're the one who fixed the outage from the elevator, right?" he asked with a grin. She chuckled, nervous. "Kind of." He handed her a tablet. "We're starting you on ticket triage. Just observe for now." Casey nodded. The room buzzed with quiet typing, low chatter, and fast clicks. She sat in an empty workstation and began reviewing customer-reported issues. Most were routine, login delays, latency spikes, and bad API returns. But she noticed a pattern. One subset of users experienced timeout errors only during scheduled maintenance windows. She flagged it for review, typing her notes cautiously, double-checking her words. Eli leaned over and read them. "You spotted a regression bug already." She shrugged. "Maybe. The logs show high response times even before maintenance kicks in." He whistled. "Nice catch." She returned to the list, each resolved ticket building her confidence, but the fear never quite left. At lunch, she sat alone in the cafeteria, barely touching her sandwich. Then a voice broke through her thoughts. "Is this seat taken?" It was Colin Hale. She nearly choked on her water. No, sir, not at all." He sat beside her, seemingly casual. "I hear your first few hours were productive," she smiled. "I'm trying not to mess up." He nodded. "The only way to fail here is to stop learning." He paused, then added, "I was the same way, no degree, just a laptop and a need to prove I wasn't a fluke." That surprised her. "You didn't go to college?" "Dropped out in year 1, he said. "You don't always need the right background, just the right drive." His words stayed with her long after lunch. She returned to her desk with renewed energy. The rest of the week blurred by. Casey stayed late, asked questions, and even offered code suggestions that made debugging faster. By Friday, she'd been pulled into a small optimization project. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. At home, she coded deep into the night, no longer out of desperation but out of hope. She joined Slack groups, began commenting on GitHub repos, and shared snippets from the systems they were working on. Strangers asked her for help. And slowly, she stopped feeling like an outsider. Her voice in the tech world was quiet, but it was growing. One Monday morning, Eli wheeled over to her desk, wide-eyed. "Your script from Friday just got deployed to prod." Casey blinked. "They used it." "Hale personally approved it," he said. "Congrats, you're officially part of the build." Her hands shook as she stared at the approval logs. She whispered, "No way," but it was there, her name, her commit, live and functional. That afternoon, the systems team gathered around cake to celebrate a successful patch cycle. Someone handed Casey the first slice. She didn't even like chocolate, but that bite tasted like everything she'd ever fought for. A week later, Casey was in the middle of tracing a slow boot bug when her screen froze. Then every screen around her froze too. Panic shot through the office. "System-wide crash?" someone shouted. A lead dev checked the server. "No, external breach. It's internal." Hale stormed in. "Status." "Unresponsive kernel threads." "We're blind," someone replied. Casey's eyes flicked to a recent config file they'd pushed. She pointed. "Roll back that patch. It restructured dependencies without compensating for thread queuing." Everyone turned to her. Eli nodded. "She's right. It bottlenecks resource calls during Cascade." They acted quickly. In 5 minutes, the system rebooted clean. Once it was resolved, Hale walked up to her. "That was a senior-level save," he said. "You have instincts money can't buy." Casey flushed. "It was teamwork." He shook his head. "Don't hide behind modesty. You're ready for more." That afternoon, she received an email. Her internship was being upgraded to a junior systems engineer role, effective, immediately, with salary, benefits, and training credits. She stared at the screen in disbelief. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she typed back, "Thank you, I accept." Then she leaned back, closed her eyes, and let the emotion wash over her. She went home that evening to her small studio apartment with walls that needed paint and a faucet that still leaked. But none of it bothered her. She'd earned her seat at the table. No one could take that from her. She called her father, a retired machinist who still couldn't understand what she did, but always believed in her anyway. "So, you're a real computer person now?" he asked proudly. "I guess I am," she laughed. He chuckled. "Or told you all that tinkering as a kid meant something." They talked until her phone battery ran low. Weeks turned to months. Casey's title changed again. Now she was a systems analyst. She built diagnostic tools, led meetings, and mentored 2 interns. Her journey became company law. The delivery girl who saved the network. Hale once joked in a company town hall, "We don't recruit just from universities, we also recruit from the sidewalk." But she earned respect, not pity. She studied on weekends, contributed to open source libraries, and once guest lectured at a community college about non-traditional tech careers. and every time someone doubted her path, she smiled and said, "Sometimes the back door gets you into the right room." Then came the biggest challenge yet. A major government contract required a specialized security layer to integrate with their system. The timeline was tight. Hale called her into his office. "We need you on this, Casey. I trust your instincts more than anyone's." She nodded. It was the first time she'd lead a project that size. Sleepless nights followed, architecting, testing, refining. On deadline day, the code passed security audit with flying colors. The client was thrilled. Hale sent her a one-line email. "You were the right bet." She stared at it for a long time before replying with a simple thank you. The next company off-site, they handed out awards. Casey received Rising Star of the Year. She stood on stage, lights in her face, applause ringing in her ears. She spoke without a script. "I was a delivery girl the first time I walked into this building. Now I deliver code. I didn't come from a fancy school. I didn't have connections. But someone gave me a chance, and that made all the difference." When she stepped down, people stood and clapped. Hale hugged her like family. It felt surreal, but also right. She belonged, fully, finally. That evening, she walked alone outside the Novatech campus, watching the sunset bleed across glass buildings. Her scooter days were behind her, but the fire that fueled her never dimmed. She remembered the long nights, the failures, the tiny victories no one saw. And now, this. Her story had begun in anonymity, wrapped in doubt, but it had transformed into something larger than she ever imagined. She looked up at the sky, whispered thanks to no one in particular, and smiled. The girl, who once delivered food, now delivered futures, including her own.